Meh. It's rolling. Building a van sounds fun until you realize you might need a shit ton of tools. My father built the first 5 or 6 vans with very little tools. In fact, he was building in our family home driveway, and sometimes it was snowing, and he was always using the same 5 or 6 tools, which I will list today. Stay until the end of the video because this is better for my retention graphs, but it's also better for you guys because you're gonna forget about this very simple tool. And I will also give you the full price breakdown at the end, so you know you won't break your bank trying to build your next van. Let's go. One of the tools that we use almost every day for screwing and making holes and making sure everything holds together is a drill. And it's not about having a drill, it's about having a good drill. You don't want a drill that's gonna die in your hands after 30 minutes every day because you are going to use it a lot. For around 200 bucks at the local hardware store. You can buy this on Amazon as well. And when I say 200, it's 200 Canadian. So it is rather cheap for my American audience. Now, most beginners are gonna think about the drill, but they're not gonna think about the next step. And the next step is all what you have to use with the drill, meaning the bits and heads. Once you have your drill, you will soon realize that this is a rotor or an engine that you can pretty much use with any kind of tips, and those tips are called drill bits and screw bits, bit set for our drill, and we still use this every day. And when I say you realize soon enough that your drill is useful for most of what you need to do with this rotary engine, I mean you can soon enough use it with larger heads like bell saws or other kinds of longer bits or everything that could be needed to screw cabinets or, you know, weird corners for your electrical setup. So just start with the basic, you know, drill bit set that you can buy at Home Depot or Rona or Home Hardware, etc. And you will be mostly fine to start working on your van at a very little cost. So now you have your drill and your bits. Now everything is useless until you have wood pieces, and this is what the next tool is all about. Now you're gonna need to turn those 4x8s into workable pieces of wood. And to do that, you need something that will cut it. And when we started making vans, we used to cut everything with a jigsaw, a normal jigsaw. People commented in the last few weeks about my father using a table saw, which is a very expensive piece of equipment, and you guys are right. However, at the beginning, when we were cutting pieces of wood on the ground, we just developed a way to lift the piece of wood a little to avoid the blade going on the concrete. We placed some guides clamped at every end of the 4x8s that we were using, and we just used those planks as guides to make straight cuts. Once the larger pieces of wood were cut, we just drew the smaller details like doors, holes, or whatever that needed to be cut, and we did that by hand or with other guides that we just clamp onto the pieces that we needed to cut. It's around $120 Canadian, and you can buy this pretty much everywhere. Make sure you have good blades that comes with it, or just buy new blades every once in a while, because you can burn your wood or you can just hurt yourself if you have a blade that doesn't work properly. So a good old jigsaw is gonna do it for the wood cutting part of the van building that you're planning. The next piece of equipment is overlooked by almost half of the people I know, and you can tell with the final result when they do not use it. And let's see what it is. You need to sand your wood before you assemble it. Otherwise, you just look and feel as a DIYer, which is totally fine if you want my advice. But you know, when you use your van and you get splinters all the time because your wood is so rough, you might just buy a sander and make your pieces of cabinetry look good. So we've been using a 5-inch orbiter sander by DeWalt. I think it's a very cheap piece of equipment for around $100 Canadian. So I use 80 to 120 sand. how do you say that? Grit. Sand grit to make the finish look a little bit polished without making it too plasticky. So 120 is the sweet spot if you have to buy sanding paper. Smack this on the Velcro of your Orbit sander and you're gonna be good to go for at least a couple of pieces per sanding paper. So you should see our cabinetry when we start. It looks nothing like this. It's very rough pieces of wood. Sometimes there are holes in it. Just go over it with the sanding machine. I just sand the hell out of it and it looks perfectly clean and perfectly straight at the end. Sometimes your lines are gonna be kind of sketchy because, you know, your wrists are gonna move or you're gonna shake a little. The sander is gonna make every line look perfect at the end, so don't worry if you think your jigsaw is gonna go in all sorts of direction. You can correct all your cuts with the sanding machine afterwards. So $100, very well invested in an orbital sanding machine with 120 grit size sanding paper. Now that you got your drills, your bits, your sanding machine, etc., you're gonna have to invest in something that's gonna hold everything together, and this is in the next section. Now that you have your drill, your bits, the cutting machine and the sanding machine, you're gonna have to invest in the assembling machine. And without this piece of tool, your build is gonna take very long or it's not gonna hold together. So let's have a look right now at what I'm talking about. This is one tool that we never planned on using when we first started, but after a few days of thinking about the assembly, it was getting very obvious that we would need a nail gun and a compressor. I know a lot of people are still using hammers, which is totally fine with a couple of nails. You can do that if your build is, you know, rough or has very large edges. However, if you're looking to do precision assembly like this here, you are going to need a nail gun. And the nail gun we got is a basic nail gun with a compressor. Very simple, very easy to use, very fun to use as well because you can assemble stuff very, very fast. This is probably the piece of equipment that is worth the most. It's around 300 bucks. Give it a shot, try a nail gun. If this is too expensive, I'm pretty sure someone in your environment has a compressor. You can just buy the nail gun and you can use it for this purpose exactly. Assemble all your little drawings that you just cut and sanded with the previous pieces of equipment that I talked about. Every morning when we get in the garage, we have to make sure where those little cheap pieces of equipment are, and I'm talking about measuring tapes. I know, I can hear you from here, from Canada. You need a measuring tape because it's the first step for every piece that we have to cut. We need to measure everything. And we say measuring tape because sometimes your measuring is gonna be several feet long. So might as well have a very good measuring tape. I know my dad and I bought 3 or 4 of those because when you lose a measuring tape, all operations stop. You need to be able to measure and adjust with very precise calculations sometimes, and the measuring tape is going to be useful for just that. Ours cost maybe around $25, $30 Canadian, and we use it every single day. Without a measuring tape, you can't really build a van unless you're using pieces of string that you cut every time. Might as well just use a measuring tape. It's probably the most overlooked piece of equipment in the van life building industry. So I'm giving you the total estimated cost for those 5 tools. I've answered many comments in the last few weeks about, you know, people saying that we work in a very expensive shop with very expensive tools. People were talking about, you know, the press drill that we have or the bench saw that we have. Yes, those are expensive, but when your job is about building stuff, you need those. When your job is not about building stuff, you can use basic power tools to do your dream project or your dream van. So the total estimated cost for those tools is around $830 Canadian. I know some people watching this are gonna say, holy shit, this is still 800 bucks, but it's much cheaper than hiring someone, which would be around 15,000, or much less pain in the ass than having your brother-in-law in your garage trying to figure out stuff with his tools. That's what I had for you this week. I hope you enjoyed. It's a more generic video while we're working on the Japanese truck. comebacks next Sunday because the Japanese truck is almost getting to an end. We are ordering the mattresses and we are starting the finish on the ceiling and on the cabinetry in the next few days. So stay tuned.